So hi, it's good to see you again. A few life updates. I graduated undergrad. Shout out to my alma mater, Winston-Salem State University. I love you. I will see you at homecoming 2025. But I'm back home now. I work full time. I'm currently working towards my master's, which I'm very excited about. But most importantly, I'm here. I'm in front of a camera talking to you. And it feels great. Every day after work, I go to the gym, I read whatever disaster book talk has recommended for me, and I work on putting content out for you guys. That's what I've been doing for the past couple months. My setup looks, feels, and sounds a lot different than it did a few months ago. And in the next video, it might look and sound different again. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I just really hope you guys stick around with me as I keep putting out projects I'm passionate about. I want you guys to enjoy them. I want you guys to be a part of the content I make. But yeah, I'm excited. Which brings us to today. Talking about Groundhog Day. I am a little late. I admit I had another video planned, and then I remembered it was February 2nd, and I said, screw it, I'm gonna make a Groundhog Day video. So here we are. Hello everybody. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. That feels so good to say. So Groundhog Day. The original movie was released in 1993. It follows a weatherman named Phil Connors as he relives February 2nd over and over and over again. Through this time loop, he does a lot of crazy stuff. He steals, he lies, he cheats, he manipulates before he gives up.
Oh my god! Oh jeez, oh my god!
Over time, he learns to eventually be a better person. Not because he has to get out of the time loop, but just because he wants to. By genuinely caring for others, improving himself, and finding joy in the little things in life, he breaks out of the time loop and gets to see February 3rd, which is to him tomorrow. Then, over 20 years later, the original writers of the original movie, Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis, along with, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Tim Minchin made the music and the lyrics. They brought that story to the stage and created what was 2016's Groundhog Day the musical. The musical, through its great music, the dark humor, and really hard-hitting emotional moments, it makes a musical adaptation that's, better than the movie. And it's due to 6 key characters that not only improve the journeys of the characters, but our journey as the audience through the musical and through the original story. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks as we dive into the 6 key characters that make the Groundhog Day musical better than the movie. What a crazy thing to come back to YouTube with. Phil Connors. Phil Connors is an asshole. He is a disgusting, rude, sexist, disrespectful, self-centered asshole. And that's just in the movie. In the musical, we don't just see Phil's arrogance and hatred for others. We hear his internal dialogue, and it's so much worse. It's because of this internal dialogue that we're able to see a version of Phil Connors that the film was never able to achieve. During Phil's opening number, Day 1, he doesn't just tolerate Punxsutawney, he outright despises it. He mocks the small town life, calling the residents people with tiny minds, big mouths, and small ideas, dismissing the community as just being filled with dubbed superstitions and fatuous chat. His frustration isn't just professional. He's done this 3-4 years before. It's personal. And then there's the nastiness of his internal dialogue. We hear how he wakes up. Lumpy bag, ugly curtains, pointless erection.
What?
The film keeps his crude, unfiltered thoughts away from the audience, but here in the musical, we hear every single detail. In the movie, Phil's frustration with the loop and the townspeople is more gradual. But in the musical, the very first moment Phil opens his mouth, he is unfiltered, unlikable, and far more aggressive in his hatred for Punxsutawney and everything around him. Even with Phil Connors being an asshole, he's still the main character in Groundhog Day. The entire film revolves around him and his experience of being trapped in a time loop. However, as the loop continues, he changes from an egotistical, self-absorbed weatherman into someone who navigates and eventually embraces the town of Punxsutawney and its people. Phil goes through different emotional stages both in the musical and the movie. Confusion, indulgence, despair, and finally, acceptance. By the end of the movie, his role is not just to escape the loop, but to learn and evolve. He becomes a better person by choosing kindness, helping others, and finding genuine love and connection. Ultimately, his journey represents the film's theme, self-improvement through empathy and personal growth. The musical elevates Phil's character by giving him more emotional depth through the songs Hope If I Had My Time Again, and Seeing You. These 3 songs show his inner struggles and growth, making his transformation feel more earned and relatable compared to the film. In the musical, the song Hope reveals Phil's darkest moments in a way that the film never does. His bitterness and thoughts are expressed through lyrics rather than in the film, which treats his repeated attempts as dark humor. The musical, ironically, puts these feelings center stage as he wakes up every day after failing to kill himself. The repetition of "never give up hope" throughout the song is especially ironic and heartbreaking. It becomes a desperate mantra that Phil sings to himself, a reminder of his stubbornness and his refusal to give up, even though the lyrics reveal how utterly defeated he feels. This constant self-reassurance emphasizes his loneliness and hopelessness, and it makes his internal struggle much more digestible for us as the audience. This depiction of his emotional descent not only intensifies our understanding of his despair, but also makes his eventual transformation into a more empathetic, self-aware person all the more impactful. Following the darker, despair-filled moments captured in Hope, the musical then shifts gears with If I Had My Time Again and Seeing You, which mark key turning points in Phil's transformation. In If I Had My Time Again, after thousands of endless loops, Phil finally opens up to Rita about the devastating toll of his self-destructive lifestyle. While Rita dreams about what she might achieve with the chance to start over, Phil lists all the acts he's committed: drinking, stealing, fucking, and contemplating. This confession to Rita isn't just Phil reflecting on all the time he's wasted. It's a powerful look into Phil's inner pain and a hint that he might finally be ready for change. Then comes Seeing You, the musical's very emotional finale. Here, Phil wakes up on February 3rd to find Rita still in his bed and a fresh layer of snow outside, symbolizing both the end of the endless loop and the dawn of a new perspective in Phil's life. In this song, Phil sings about how he once thought he knew every detail of Punxsutawney, only to realize that there's beauty in its simplicity. His journey from cynicism to self-awareness is shown as he embraces the present moment, finally connecting with the town and its people in a meaningful way. This transformation elevates his character far beyond the film's portrayal, offering us an intimate look at a man who has learned that redemption comes not from escaping life's repetitive cycle, but from engaging with it, and in doing so, discovering genuine hope and connection. Phil's character arc in the musical feels more personal and profound than in the movie, because it invites the audience directly into his head, making his transformation feel earned rather than just observed. While the film shows us his change through action, the musical lets us experience his struggle firsthand, his frustration, his self-loathing, and his eventual growth. This deeper emotional connection makes his redemption feel more powerful, as we don't just see him become a better person, we understand why and how he got there. By giving Phil this added depth, the musical not only elevates his character, but also enhances the story's emotional impact, making his journey more meaningful and relatable than it ever was in the film. Rita Hanson. Rita Hanson is flat. She's played by the beautiful and talented Andie MacDowell, and this is off script, but Andie MacDowell, I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, she plays the mother in one of my favorite horror films, Ready or Not. Love her. Love that film. But anyways, Rita Hanson's Phil's TV producer. She's everything Phil is not. She's polite, she's generous, she's kind, and she always sees the best in people. Throughout the film, Phil repeatedly tries to win her over while trapped in the time loop, but he fails every single time. It isn't until he genuinely changes, showing compassion and selflessness, that Rita finally falls for him, which is exactly why Rita Hanson is a terrible character in the original film. Rita's role, that's a crazy statement to say. Keep in mind, Groundhog Day is one of my favorite movies ever. I love this movie, but she's a terrible character in the original. Phil sees Rita as a goal or a prize to get by the end of the movie. We know this because after allegedly sleeping with almost every single woman in Punxsutawney, he sets his sight on Rita. He manipulates her through repeated, calculated attempts to seduce her, exploiting the time loop to learn all of her favorite things and craft her the perfect day. While the film presents these moments as romantic, they are, in fact, coercive, which is, in fact, a crime. Even though Rita repeatedly rejects Phil, the film treats his persistence as part of his journey, rather than acknowledging his manipulation. The film does recognize Phil's inappropriate behavior, but rather than critiquing Phil for stepping over Rita's boundaries, the film plays this off comedically through the iconic montage, it is iconic, of Rita slapping Phil each time he pushes way too far. By the end of the film, Rita chooses Phil only after he has supposedly transformed into a different man overnight. Yet, while Phil goes through significant personal growth, Rita remains the same. She is still intelligent, she's still kind, she's still professional, but she feels second to Phil, existing only to react to his transformation rather than having a meaningful journey of her own. Rita's character stays the same throughout the movie, suggesting that she was already perfect. She was just waiting for Phil to get to her level. Unlike Phil, Rita lacks depth and complexity. Because of this, the film perpetuates the harmful trope where women are reduced to prizes for men rather than individuals with their own storylines. But then the musical changes this. Rita introduces herself in February 2nd, singing not only about her excitement to be in Punxsutawney for the first time, but also about her experience working with Phil Connors. She sings, "Working with Phil Connors. They all told me he would be an asshole." And he is. This shows us her perspective and how unimpressed she is with Phil. Later, and If I Had My Time Again, she sings about all the choices she's made in her life and acknowledges that if she was given another chance, she would do things differently, this time on her own terms. However, no song in the musical elevates Rita's character from the film quite like her solo in One Day. Quite possibly my favorite song in the whole show. It is my favorite song in the whole show. I love One Day. While the film presents Rita as a flawless dream girl, the musical instead critiques these negative stereotypes throughout One Day. Rita actively challenges these fairy tale romance tropes, ridiculing the unrealistic standards society has placed on women. The opening lines of One Day were, "I was brought up in taffeta dresses and taught to be pretty and precious," reveal Rita's vulnerabilities and highlight the absurd beauty standards forced on her from a very, very young age. Throughout the song, Rita continues to critique beauty standards, but what's even more significant is her deconstruction of an ideal man. By this point in her life, now in her late 30s, she has gained experience and witnessed firsthand the trials and tribulations of dating. She has seen the downfalls of relationships, including those of close friends who have been hurt by men. One particularly telling moment in the song is when she recalls a friend whose husband, from not long ago, got divorced and ran away with another woman, and she was left with, I think it was a big swimming pool. Throughout this and other experiences, Rita expresses her frustration with romantic ideals, singing, "I'd rather be lonely than sit on my fanny waiting for my prince to come." Yet, despite this, Rita acknowledges how complicated her desires are. She rejects traditional romance, but still entertains fantasies, where she sings, "I'm not bitter, it's just better that I don't fall for all that romantic bullshit now that I'm older. Although, I don't mind the thought of being tossed over a shoulder and trotted off to a mansion by some ruggedly handsome man in a fireman helmet and have him just use me for sex. As I say, it's a little complex." These lines reveal that while Rita has matured and developed a more critical view of love, she still has personal desires, including sexual ones, making her character feel more layered and authentic. Me too, Rita. Yeah, me too, Rita. Anyways, later in the song, Rita openly acknowledges that yes, she does dream of finding a man, and she lays out an extensive list of qualities she desires in a partner. She wants a man with a full head of hair, someone who likes to read, who is kind, but also goes to the gym, though not too obsessed with their looks. However, these criteria come with caveats, which Phil mockingly points out both in the film and musical, questioning whether she's still describing a man or something else completely. Despite his teasing, these expectations are ones Rita has held on to her entire life. She refused to settle for a condescending clown with some rating from some dating service, or some self-professing Mr. Perfect. The most significant takeaway from the song is that while Rita has spent over 30 years navigating the frustration of dating, marriage, and society's expectations, she's prioritized her personal and professional fulfillment over the pursuit of romance. She has come to terms with the fact that she will not compromise her standards for someone who doesn't meet them. However, as the song reveals, despite her independence and self-assurance, deep down, love is still something that she desires. The song transforms Rita's character from a passive love interest into an independent, fully realized individual with her own desires, frustrations, and standards. Unlike the film, where Phil's relentless and manipulative pursuit is romanticized, the musical empowers Rita to set clear boundaries through One Day. This song not only dismisses Phil's advances, but also challenges society's pressures on women to accept less or prioritize romance over personal fulfillment. By expressing her frustration with romantic tropes and the flawed men she's encountered, Rita shifts the narrative from one in which she's merely a prize to be won to one where she actively shapes her own future. The lyrics highlight her refusal to lower her standards for the sake of companionship. Rather than accepting the role of a dream girl for Phil's redemption, she demands that any relationship be built on mutual understanding and respect. reinforcing the idea that love should not come at the cost of one's integrity. Thankfully, the musical reimagines Phil and Rita's relationship as a shared journey. Instead of portraying their connection as the result of one person's transformation, the musical highlights how both characters grow together, evolving into equals. In Seeing You, we witness a turning point where not only do Phil and Rita reflect on the journey they've gone through, but even the ensemble contributes, emphasizing their mutual discovery of one another. The lyrics that Rita sings, "I thought I'd seen it all before, I thought I knew everything there was to know about men like you," and the refrain, "I'm here and I'm fine and I'm seeing you for the first time," capture this shift perfectly. They reveal that their bond is not about one character conquering the other, rather, it is genuine. These earned partnerships are built on shared experiences and growth. This is a huge change from the original film, where Phil's relentless pursuit feels more like a conquest. In the musical, their connection is presented as a balance, a true coming together where both contribute equally to a relationship. Gus and Ralph. Gus and Ralph are two drunk morons. In the musical, up until this point, Phil has experienced Groundhog Day at least 3 or 4 times. He's beginning to understand that something is terribly wrong. He's stuck in a time loop. He spoke to different medical professionals, but they all have given him horrible advice. Frustrated, Phil goes to a bar and vents to a couple locals during a drink. These two locals, Gus and Ralph, chat with Phil for a bit. One of them even says to him, "You know what? You seem like a glass half full kind of guy," which is pretty good advice coming from someone Phil has never met. Okay. Later, Phil decides that Gus and Ralph shouldn't drive. They're both very, very drunk. And as Phil takes them home, on the drive, he asks them, "What would you guys do if you had to live the same day over and over and over again?" Phil had asked them this earlier at the bar, except this time, they told Phil that there would be no consequences, and that they could do whatever they wanted. This makes Phil realize that if the day resets, no one will remember anything. So, after a very long rant, Phil decides he's going to drive on the railroad tracks while being chased by police officers. The next morning, Phil Connors wakes up with no consequences at all. Gus and Ralph don't contribute to Phil's journey. They're a part of his experience. It's really through talking to them and taking care of them in the movie that Phil realizes he truly has no consequences in the time loop. However, Gus and Ralph help humanize Punxsutawney, making the small town feel real. But beyond that, they don't serve any other purpose in the movie other than comic relief. However, in the musical, Gus and Ralph, who were presented as two local drunks in Punxsutawney, are turned into symbolic characters who represent frustrations many people in Punxsutawney, or maybe some people watching the musical, may feel about their lives through their song, "Nobody Cares." Through the song, Gus and Ralph are effortlessly able to recount their daily routine, starting from "I wake with a headache," before continuing to describe their daily cycle of waking up, completing trivial tasks, and ending up at the bar at the end of each and every day. The song's lyrics express the frustration of a purposeless, unchanging existence. This is clear in the lines, "Nobody cares what I say, nobody cares what I do," which strikes a chord with Gus, Ralph, and Phil as they recognize their shared experience. Through the song, Phil realizes that they are trapped in a cycle just like him. However, unlike Phil, who eventually wants to change, Gus and Ralph seem perfectly fine with their fate, representing townspeople who lack agency and have no hope for improvement in Phil's eyes. Despite their seamlessly pointless cycle, Gus and Ralph's song add humor to the serious subject of feeling stuck in life. The juxtaposition of their comedy with themes of existential despair highlight the absurdity of life in small, isolated towns like Punxsutawney. Gus and Ralph's actions, comedically, are detailed through song. They reveal how deeply ingrained they are in their mundane cycles, where one day blends into the next without change. They're no longer just drunks. They symbolize the town's stagnation, where people live without expectation or change. The musical elevates Gus and Ralph from mere comic relief in the movie to powerful symbols of universal frustration and the search for meaning. Their song not only shows the theme of feeling overlooked, but also captures the deep human desire to find purpose in even the most mundane of lives. As we journey through the musical, their humorous yet existential questioning mirrors our own struggles. It reminds us that no matter how repetitive our routines may seem, our experiences and emotions matter. By transforming these two into relatable voices, the musical allows us to see our inner conflicts reflected in their lyrics. Nancy Taylor. Nancy Taylor is easy. After going on a car chase with the police, Phil sees Nancy in the Punxsutawney diner, where he asks for her name, the high school she attended, her 12th grade English teacher, and of course, if she went to see the Groundhog that morning. At first, this seems harmless, But in the next loop, we see Phil approach Nancy again, this time with the information he gathered from her. By pretending they were classmates, he wins her trust, charms her, and eventually the two of them have sex. It is through Nancy that we see how easily Phil can manipulate people when he uses the loop to his advantage. After successfully manipulating Nancy, he uses this on other women in Puxatawny, reinforcing how little he values them and sees the town as real people. In the film, Nancy is just a minor character who's just used to show Phil's manipulation of women during the time loop. She represents one of his many conquests in his attempt to win over various women in the town before settling and attempting to win over Rita. In the movie, Nancy's character is shallow and one-dimensional. She serves only as an attractive woman for Phil to seduce. She has no real purpose beyond Phil's storyline. The musical, however, reimagines Nancy as a character with depth and a voice. She's no longer just an object of Phil's affection, but a fully realized character with her own perspective. Nancy's line in the song One Day reveals her desire to break free from her pattern of dating older men, and shows her desire for personal growth and empowerment. The line she sings is, "I'll stop dating men who are 20 years older," which in both the film and musical, Phil is significantly older than Nancy. The line foreshadows Nancy's greater ambitions and establishes her depth beyond her relationships and her past choices. The differences between Nancy and Phil's experiences in the time loop are also highlighted by the song. Phil has countless opportunities to change, but Nancy's life seems to be stuck on repeat. Nancy's solo song, however, Playing Nancy, explores these feelings of being trapped, one that's created through society's expectations and through romantic regrets. Throughout the song, Nancy sings to us how she recognizes that society values her only for her looks, and this has shaped her self-image for years. She's played the role of the pretty but naive one, but it's all she's known since she was a teenager. Nancy's frustration is in the expectation that her worth is tied only to her appearance, and she wants to be recognized for more than just her appearance. Nancy was taught from a very early age that adhering to beauty standards and being attractive would make her desirable. However, as she grew older, she realized that this was shallow and an unfulfilling existence. Lines like, "It's pretty hard to stop, it isn't easy to break free" of playing Nancy reveals her self-awareness and her longing for change, while also highlighting the challenges of breaking free from a role that has been ingrained in her for years. Nancy feels frustrated by a society that reduces her worth to her physical appearance. This objectification has placed her in a role where she feels put here to be stared at. Although she resists this internally, she recognizes the pressure of conforming to societal norms. This conflict forces her to struggle with her identity in a world that prioritizes her appearance over her individuality, thoughts, and feelings. The musical explores society's expectations and gender roles through the characters of Nancy and Rita, who respond to society's pressures in different ways. Nancy feels trapped by society's expectation that a woman's worth is tied to her looks, while Rita's solo in One Day dives into the complexities of womanhood in a world that often limits a woman's opportunities. Rita's frustration stems from a desire for professional fulfillment and recognition, while Nancy wants to escape her superficial identity. Nancy's transformation in playing Nancy empowers her to redefine herself, while Rita seeks to balance professional success with personal fulfillment. The contrast between these two characters enhances the musical's exploration of gender identity and self-empowerment. Just like Gus and Ralph, the musical expands on the original film story by giving Nancy's character greater depth. This emphasizes that Phil is not the only one facing challenges. The film mainly focuses on Phil's experiences, leaving characters like Nancy underdeveloped. However, Nancy's song reveals her complexities of relationships and personal growth. It highlights that people who may just seem like objects of desire or targets of manipulation may have their own story to tell. Her character development is essential to the musical's success, as her journey from self-awareness to self-empowerment provides a crucial contrast to Phil's growth. As Phil gradually recognizes the depth and complexity of those around him, Nancy's transformation teaches us that genuine empathy and understanding happen when you go beyond the surface of an individual and acknowledge that everyone has a significant story to share. Ned Ryerson. Ned Ryerson is annoying as hell. He is relentless, overbearing, and oblivious to how Phil doesn't want to talk to him. Ned appears out of nowhere every day the instant Phil steps outside, and with relentless enthusiasm, he goes into his usual routine of trying to sell Phil insurance. Ned isn't just annoying, he is designed to be. His whole character is built around testing Phil's patience. He's pushy, he's loud, and he has absolutely no concept of personal space. His job as an insurance salesman only adds to the stereotype of someone who will just not take no for an answer. It's a nightmare interaction with an old classmate that never ends, adding to Phil's constant misery in the time loop. While Ned Ryerson is still an annoyance in the Groundhog Day musical, he becomes more important in the story, and this is evident with his insurance company jingle, "Death will come to everyone." This line is played for laughs, and Ned does not just say it, he sings it every single day to Phil. At the end of Act 1, during the ensemble number One Day, where the whole town is singing about their hopes, their dreams, and plans for the future, Ned sings "Death will come to everyone" again. He is continuing to sing about death. Ned's line, "Death will come to everyone," feels incredibly out of place with the rest of the song. Every other character has aspirations and goals, but Ned is still focused on selling insurance. It seems like he hasn't changed and exists only for a punchline. Then Act 2 changes everything. One day, Phil instinctively punches Ned, as he has done in countless loops beforehand, but this time, something is different. Phil apologizes, and for the first time, Ned opens up. Ned tells Phil about his family, his children, and his now deceased wife. In that moment, we realize that Ned is more than just a persistent salesman. He's a man who's experienced real loss. The idea that death will come to everyone suddenly stops being a silly tagline and becomes a sad truth. And this is when the musical expands on Ned's character in a way that the movie never did. They give him a song, "Night Will Come." Throughout the song, Ned reminds both Phil and the audience that no one can escape their fate. As Ned sings, Phil simultaneously experiences one of his biggest struggles in the time loop, his repeated, failed attempts to save a homeless man from dying. No matter how many times Phil relives the day, no matter how much he tries, the man always passes away. While this is happening, Ned is singing "Night Will Come." Ned's lyrics emphasize the idea that death is inescapable. He personifies it as a woman with open arms who patiently awaits everyone. On and on you stumble on towards the evening sun. She waits for you with open arms. You stare right through her. This contrasts with Phil's failed attempts to control every aspect of his existence through the loop, because Ned has found peace in accepting the inevitability of change. He encourages Phil and the audience to cherish life and recognize that everything, even with all the love and all the gold, all you've built and all you've sold, all the power you may hold, you won't evade her, and that it's meaningless to try to run away. The final lines of the song transform the once dreaded jingle into a powerful message. You gotta love life, you gotta love life, you gotta love life. A phrase that once seemed like an empty marketing slogan now turns into genuinely good advice, one that Phil and hopefully the audience will carry with them as they move forward. While Ned remains a minor character in the film, the musical elevates him into something more. A man who has faced grief and loss, yet still chooses to live with kindness and optimism. He becomes a powerful contrast to Phil, showing him what it means to embrace life, despite its inevitable end. By the time Phil reaches his transformation, he no longer sees Ned as an annoyance to avoid. Instead, he treats him with genuine kindness, culminating in the moment where he buys every single type of life insurance that Ned sells. This moment isn't just played for laughs. It's a demonstration of Phil's new generosity, showing that he's no longer acting purely in self-interest. What makes this moment especially touching is that the audience now understands who Ned truly is. We've seen the weight he carries, the loss he's endured, and now he chooses to move forward despite it. In the musical, Phil's kindness isn't just about humoring an annoying salesman. It's about recognizing Ned's humanity in a way that he never did before. The townspeople. The people in Punxsutawney have no purpose. Outside of highlighting Phil's negativity or being used to show off his mastery of the time loop, they are background characters. However, the musical reimagines them as a living entity influencing Phil's journey towards change, rather than just being in the background. They're given solos, distinct personalities, and meaningful interactions. The townspeople's presence in their major numbers not only helps them in becoming more than just minor characters, but they also change Phil's idea of a town that's predictable and lifeless to one that's vibrant and full of possibility. The opening number, "There Will Be Sun," introduces Punxsutawney as a town full of hope. The townspeople have faith in a brighter future, even when the gloomy weather and with their repetitive lives. This song highlights the difference between their optimism and Phil's. The townspeople accept life's uncertainties with hope, while Phil hates being stuck in their world. The song is ironic because they constantly sing about tomorrow, but Phil is the one with no tomorrow, as he's trapped, reliving the same day. The radio host's over-the-top excitement and the townspeople's persistent optimism in Small-Town USA, the first song in Day 1, are important because later in the song, they are told that even though there will be 6 more weeks of winter, instead of being sad or disappointed like they were in the film, they are excited and are cheering, showing their upbeat and resilient nature. In February 2nd, they don't play a distinct role in Rita's solo, but we still get to hear the repeated hopeful phrases, like about tomorrow being a bright sunny day, inevitably emphasizes Phil's struggle that he's going to experience. While they look forward to a new day, Phil is forced to relive the same day over and over for what some have calculated as decades. Their optimism, which he dismisses as foolish, becomes a lesson in perspective. While initially the song Nobody Cares is essentially Gus and Ralph's solo song, the ensemble still participates in the song. By the end of the song, the idea that there are absolutely no consequences becomes literal as Phil begins philandering. He manipulates the townspeople and uses them as pawns to self-indulge, and throughout, the townspeople are singing in the background as an ever-present judgmental voice in his head. Then, the song One Day changes the focus to Rita and the ensemble. While Phil is trapped in a time loop, the townspeople are trapped in their routines every day, whether they know it or not. Each character dreams of changing something in their lives, but they postpone it to one day. This reinforces Phil's story that he has endless time, but the townspeople are stuck in routines that they think they will break free from, but they never do. Up until this point, Phil believes that he's a god. However, the town reminds both Phil and the audience that our time is limited. They remind us that change requires us to make a change, not just wait for things to change overnight. Then Phil loses all hope. During the song, the ensemble becomes ironic as their encouragement and optimism to never give up hope is happening at the same time as Phil is trying and failing to end his life. Then later, as Phil is beginning to get a new outlook on a situation, the townspeople become a driving force of change with Rita in the song If I Had My Time Again. While Rita is being optimistic and Phil is going over how much time he's wasted in the loop, the townspeople are lifting Rita's voice higher, showcasing the possibility of finding meaning and purpose in repetition. As Phil moves through Punxsutawney in philanthropy, we see not only him change, but also the town itself. One small example is when Phil helps Doris learn how to sing, something that she said she would do one day in one day. This small act of kindness shows that Phil is not just observing the town, but is now actively engaging with them. To Phil, they're no longer just the ensemble of background characters, but instead, they're a living, breathing community with unique individuals that have their own hopes and dreams. It all comes together in Seeing You when Phil wakes up on February 3rd and no longer sees Punxsutawney as a trap. The town hasn't changed, but Phil's perception of it has. The lyrics also emphasize his appreciation for this moment with the repetition of I'm seeing you for the first time. This shows that both Phil and the audience are seeing the people of Punxsutawney as real individuals and not just recurring figures in a time loop. By turning the townspeople into characters, the musical elevates the story's message about human connection. Their optimism, despite the nature of their daily lives, truly helps us understand Phil's ultimate realization by the end of the movie. Life has meaning even with repetition. Growth doesn't come from avoiding the repetition, but from finding purpose and connection in it. The Groundhog Day musical doesn't just retell the story, it transforms it. Characters like Nancy, Ned, and even Gus and Ralph, who were once minor roles, are given depth and purpose through their musical numbers and ensemble pieces. Playing Nancy turns a character who was only used for sexual satisfaction into a reflection on how she is perceived and treated. Ned Ryerson, once simple comic relief, is given the heartbreaking Night Will Come, revealing his hidden pain and outlook on life. Even Gus and Ralph, who seemed like drunk side characters, give us an existential perspective in Nobody Cares. Most importantly, Rita transforms in One Day, where she sings about her ambitions and her frustrations, making her more than just a flat, passive love interest. These songs don't just add emotional weight, they reshape how these townspeople and these characters actively influence Phil's transformation in ways that we never saw in the original film. By enhancing these characters and emphasizing the importance of human connection, it reinforces the theme that the original film was trying to teach us over 30 years ago. Life isn't about escaping repetition, but embracing it. The musical encourages us to appreciate the beauty in everyday moments, and recognize that true change comes from within. Whether you're a lifetime fan of the film or you're new to the story, experiencing Groundhog Day as a musical offers a new perspective, one that, much like the day itself, is worth revisiting over and over and over again. That's all I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please like this video. If there's any other musicals you'd like me to talk about or analyze, I have a very epic list coming up. I have so many that are under my radar. I also have a lot of movies and TV shows and video games and things I want to talk about, but I want to hear some of the things you guys want me to talk about. Please let me know what you want me to take a closer look at in the comment section below. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. It's good to be back. I will see you guys all on the next take. Bye-bye. That feels so great. I'm so excited. Okay, now let me save my work.